I still remember the sound of silverware hitting plates when my uncle stood up at my promotion dinner and screamed those words across the restaurant. Every head in Antonio's Italian kitchen turned toward us. The room went silent. My uncle's face was red, his finger pointing directly at me as he shouted, "Emma Rodriguez embezzled money from our family business. She's been stealing from us for years." The restaurant froze. My mom's fork clattered onto her plate. My sister Sarah grabbed my hand under the table. I could feel 50 pairs of eyes on me, watching, judging. This was supposed to be my night. My tech company had just promoted me to senior marketing director. I'd flown home to Ohio to celebrate with my family in the town where everyone knows everyone. And now my uncle, the man who'd raised me after my dad died, was destroying me in front of everyone. I stood up slowly. My hands weren't shaking. I'd known this moment was coming. I walked to the microphone they'd set up for speeches, pulled out my phone, and said, "Uncle Richard, before you continue, I think everyone here should listen to something." I hit play. His voice filled the restaurant. "Let me back up. I need to tell you how we got here. I was 7 when my dad died. Heart attack at 41. My mom fell apart. She couldn't work, couldn't function. My Uncle Richard stepped in. He was Dad's younger brother, and he'd always been the fun uncle, the one who brought presents and took us to baseball games. After Dad died, he became more than that. He managed Dad's small cafe, the one Dad had spent 10 years building. He helped pay our bills. He drove me and Sarah to school. He taught me how to ride a bike. When I graduated high school, he cried harder than my mom did. Uncle Richard became my father figure. When I decided to study marketing at Ohio State, he encouraged me. When I got my first job at a tech startup in Columbus, he was the first person I called. And when that company offered me a promotion that would change my life, he insisted on throwing me a dinner party. "You've made us all so proud, Emma," he'd said on the phone 2 weeks before. "Let me do this. Your dad would have wanted to celebrate you. Let me do it for him." How could I say no? But 3 months before that phone call, something had happened that changed everything. I'd gotten a letter from a bank I didn't recognize. It was addressed to me, but it referenced an account I'd never opened. I almost threw it away, thinking it was junk mail. Instead, I called the bank. "Miss Rodriguez, this is regarding your investment account opened in 2021, the representative said. "Your balance is currently at $42,000. I'd never opened that account. I'd never invested $42,000 anywhere. I was 32 years old, living in a studio apartment, still paying off student loans. Where would I get that kind of money? That's when I remembered. 3 years ago, when I turned 29, I'd received my inheritance from my dad's estate. The cafe had been sold by then. Uncle Richard had managed everything, and he'd told me my share was $50,000. He'd helped me invest it, he said. Set up a trust that would grow over time. I'd signed some papers without reading them carefully. I trusted him. He was family. But now I was looking at an account that had somehow lost $8,000 in 3 years. That didn't make sense. Even a bad investment shouldn't lose money in a growing market. I called my friend Marcus. He's an accountant, one of the few people from high school who also made it out of our small town. "Marcus, I need you to look at something," I said. "I think something's wrong with my inheritance." Marcus came over that weekend. I showed him the bank letter, the trust documents Uncle Richard had given me, everything. He spent 4 hours going through papers, making calls, pulling up public records. His face got darker as the hours passed. "Emma," he finally said, "I don't know how to tell you this. But your uncle didn't invest your money. He transferred it into the business account for your dad's old cafe." "What?" "But the cafe was sold years ago." "It was never sold. Your uncle told everyone it was sold, but he transferred ownership to himself. He's been running it this whole time, and he's been using your inheritance as operating capital." I felt sick. "How much?" "The $50,000 from your inheritance. Plus, I think you should check on Sarah's trust fund. Your dad set one up for her college, right?" Sarah's trust fund. She was 23 now, finishing her senior year at Kent State. Dad had put aside $80,000 for her education when she was born. Mom had been too depressed to manage finances, so Uncle Richard had taken over as trustee. I called Sarah that night. "Sarah, have you been using your trust fund for college?" She laughed. "What trust fund?" Uncle Richard told me 2 years ago that Dad never set one up. That's why I've been taking out loans. My stomach dropped. Sarah, Dad set up a trust with $80,000 in it. I saw the documents when I was 16. The silence on the phone was deafening. Then Sarah said quietly, "Emma, I owe $60,000 in student loans." That's when I knew. Uncle Richard hadn't just taken my money. He'd stolen from both of us. From two girls who'd lost their father, who'd trusted him to protect what Dad had left for us. I hung up and called Marcus back. "I need you to help me. I need to know everything he took." For the next 2 months, Marcus and I investigated quietly. He pulled financial records, traced accounts, followed money trails. I drove home every weekend, pretending everything was normal, having dinner with Uncle Richard and Aunt Linda while secretly photographing documents in their home office. What we found was worse than I'd imagined. Uncle Richard had taken my $50,000 and Sarah's $80,000, total $130,000. He'd used it to keep the cafe running after it started failing. But instead of telling us, instead of asking for help, he'd forged documents, created fake trust statements, and lied to our faces for years. The cafe was now successful. Uncle Richard had turned it around. It was worth about $300,000. He'd used our inheritance to save it, and now he owned it entirely. We owned nothing. But the worst part. 2 weeks into my investigation, I discovered he was planning to disinherit us completely. He'd convinced my mom, in her fragile state, to sign papers that would leave everything to him when she died. He'd told her it was for estate planning, that it would protect the family. My mom barely understood what she'd signed. "Emma, this is fraud," Marcus said. "Multiple counts. Forgery, embezzlement, potentially elder abuse with your mom. You need to go to the police." But I hesitated. This was Uncle Richard. The man who'd taught me to drive. Who'd walked me down the aisle at my college graduation because Dad couldn't. How could I destroy him? Then I found out about the promotion dinner. Uncle Richard called me, excited. "I'm throwing you a party at Antonio's, Emma. Everyone will be there. The whole family, your mom's friends, people from the cafe. You deserve to be celebrated." Marcus looked at me when I told him. "Emma, he's not celebrating you. He knows you're investigating. He's going to try to discredit you first. He's going to accuse you of something publicly before you can expose him. You think he knows? I think he's smart. And I think he's desperate." So Marcus and I set a trap. We needed Uncle Richard to admit what he'd done. We needed proof that would hold up in court, that couldn't be denied or explained away. We needed his voice confessing. I called Uncle Richard 3 days before the party. "Uncle Richard, I need to talk to you about something. About Dad's estate." He got very quiet. "What about it?" "I got a weird letter from a bank. About an account I don't remember opening. I thought maybe you could help me understand it." I could hear him breathing on the other end. "Emma, let's talk about this at the party." Not over the phone. "But Uncle Richard, I'm confused. The bank says." "Emma," I said, "we'll talk at the party. Don't worry about it. Everything is fine. I've taken care of everything, just like I always have." That wasn't good enough. We needed more. So Marcus suggested something risky. He'd call Uncle Richard, pretending to be a forensic accountant hired by me. He'd pressure him, make him think the investigation was farther along than it was. Maybe, in a panic, Uncle Richard would say something incriminating. Marcus made the call 2 days before the party. He told Uncle Richard he was investigating financial irregularities in my dad's estate. He mentioned specific account numbers, dates, amounts. He said I'd hired him and we were considering legal action. Uncle Richard panicked. He called me an hour later. "Emma, I just got a call from some accountant. What's going on? Why are you investigating me?" "Uncle Richard, I just want to understand where my inheritance went. You said it was invested, but I can't find it. You're questioning me. After everything I've done for you. I raised you, Emma. I saved this family after your dad died. And this is how you repay me." His voice was getting louder, angrier. I put him on speakerphone. Marcus had given me a recording app. I hit record. "Uncle Richard, I'm not trying to attack you. I just want to know where the money went. The money went into keeping this family afloat. You think it was easy after your dad died? You think the cafe just ran itself? I sacrificed everything. I used every resource I had, including that inheritance, to keep us from losing everything. But you told me it was invested. You showed me documents. I did what I had to do. You were a kid. You didn't understand business. I made the hard choices. And now you want to accuse me of stealing? After I took care of you and Sarah and your mother for 10 years? What about Sarah's trust fund? Silence. Then, Sarah's education was expensive. I paid for things your mother couldn't afford. That money was used for her benefit. She has $60,000 in student loans. Uncle Richard. That's not my fault. College costs money. I did the best I could. You think it's easy managing everyone's finances? You think. He stopped. I could hear him breathing hard. I'm not having this conversation over the phone. We'll settle this at your party. I'll explain everything to everyone. I'll show them who's really been taking care of this family. He hung up. I stared at my phone, at the recording that was still running. I had him. Not a full confession, but enough. Enough to show he'd taken the money, used it for the business, lied about investments. Combined with the documents Marcus had found, it would be enough. He's going to try to flip this on you at the party, Marcus said. He's going to accuse you publicly. He'll say you're lying. That you're trying to steal from the family. He'll make himself look like the victim. I know. So what are we going to do? I looked at the recording on my phone. We're going to let him try. The night of the party arrived. I wore a navy dress, professional and confident. Sarah came with me, nervous. She knew everything now. Mom was already there, seated at the head table, smiling and clueless. Aunt Linda was arranging flowers. Uncle Richard was greeting guests at the door, playing the proud uncle. He hugged me when I arrived. Emma, sweetheart. Tonight is all about you. I'm so proud. I hugged him back, feeling sick. Thank you, Uncle Richard. For everything. The restaurant was packed. 50, maybe 60 people. Former neighbors, family friends, people from the cafe, Mom's book club, Sarah's friends. Antonio's had set up a microphone and small sound system for speeches. Uncle Richard had requested it, he said, so people could share memories and congratulations. I knew what he'd really requested it for. We ate pasta, salads, breadsticks. People laughed and talked. Uncle Richard made small talk, but I could see him watching me, calculating. Aunt Linda seemed nervous, though she didn't know why. Sarah held my hand under the table. After dessert, Uncle Richard stood and tapped his wine glass. Everyone, thank you for coming tonight. We're here to celebrate my niece, Emma Rodriguez, and her incredible promotion. Emma has made us all so proud. People applauded. I smiled and waved. Uncle Richard continued. Emma's father, my brother Michael, would be so proud of her tonight. When Michael passed away 10 years ago, I made him a promise. I promised I would take care of his girls, his wife, his legacy. I've tried to honor that promise every single day. More applause. Mom was crying happy tears. Uncle Richard was playing this perfectly. I've managed the family finances, helped Emma and Sarah with their education, kept Michael's cafe running as a tribute to him. It hasn't always been easy, but it's been my honor. He paused. His face changed. His voice got harder. Which is why it breaks my heart to stand here tonight and address a serious accusation. Emma has recently accused me of financial impropriety. She's hired investigators. She's questioned my management of her father's estate. She's essentially accused me of stealing from her. The room went silent. People were looking at me now, confused. Mom's smile was gone. Aunt Linda looked shocked. Uncle Richard's voice rose. Emma Rodriguez has been embezzling money from our family business. She's been taking funds that were meant to honor her father's memory, and she's been using them for herself. And now, to cover up her own theft, she's trying to blame me. The silverware hit the plates. The room froze. 50 pairs of eyes on me, exactly as Marcus predicted. Uncle Richard was breathing hard, his face red, his finger pointing at me. I have proof, Emma. I have documents showing transfers from the cafe account to your personal accounts. You've been stealing from this family for 2 years. Sarah was squeezing my hand so hard it hurt. Mom looked like she might faint. People were whispering, shocked. I stood up, slowly, calmly. I walked to the microphone. Uncle Richard stepped back, triumphant, thinking he'd won. I pulled out my phone. Uncle Richard, before you continue, I think everyone here should listen to something. I plugged my phone into the sound system. I hit play. Uncle Richard's voice filled the restaurant. Our phone conversation from 2 days ago, crystal clear through Antonio's speakers. The money went into keeping this family afloat. You think the cafe just ran itself? I sacrificed everything. I used every resource I had, including that inheritance, to keep us from losing everything. But you told me it was invested. You showed me documents. I did what I had to do. You were a kid. You didn't understand business. I made the hard choices. The room was dead silent. Uncle Richard's face went white. Then red. Then white again. The recording continued. What about Sarah's trust fund? Silence on the recording. Then Uncle Richard's voice. Sarah's education was expensive. I paid for things your mother couldn't afford. That money was used for her benefit. She has $60,000 in student loans, Uncle Richard. People were looking at Sarah now. She was crying quietly. I stopped the recording. I looked at Uncle Richard. You want to talk about theft? Let's talk about the $50,000 of my inheritance you took. The $80,000 from Sarah's trust fund. The documents you forged, the trust statements you faked, the lies you told for 3 years. Uncle Richard tried to speak. Emma, you don't understand. I understand that you used our father's death to steal from his daughters. I understand that while Sarah was taking out student loans she didn't need, you were running a successful cafe with her money. I understand that you were planning to cut us out of Mom's will too. Mom made a sound. A small, broken sound. Aunt Linda was staring at her husband like she'd never seen him before. I pulled out a folder. I have bank statements, transfer records, forged trust documents with your handwriting. A handwriting expert's analysis confirming the forgeries. 3 years of lies, all documented. Uncle Richard's hands were shaking. Emma, please. Let me explain. It's not what you think. I was trying to save the family. By stealing from 2 daughters who'd lost their father? By lying to your sister-in-law while she was grieving? By making Sarah go into $60,000 of debt when she had money set aside for school? The room erupted. People talking, gasping, some getting up from their tables. Mom was crying. Aunt Linda was standing now, backing away from Uncle Richard like he was a stranger. Uncle Richard tried one more time. I built that cafe. I made it successful. I deserve. You deserve to go to jail, I said. My voice was calm, cold. Which is what's going to happen. Because I've already filed a police report, and the officers are outside right now. I hadn't planned it this dramatically. But Marcus had convinced me to call the police before the party, to have them standing by. They'd been waiting for my signal. I nodded to Sarah. She walked to the door and opened it. 2 officers walked in. The next hour was chaos. Uncle Richard tried to leave. The officers stopped him. He yelled, claiming I was lying. That I'd manipulated the recording. But when they asked him if that was his voice on the recording, he couldn't deny it. When they asked if he'd taken my inheritance and Sarah's trust fund, he couldn't answer. They arrested him at my promotion dinner, in front of everyone who'd known our family for years. Aunt Linda collapsed into a chair, crying. Mom just stared, unable to process what was happening. Sarah held my hand through all of it. The guests left quickly, uncomfortable and shocked. The party was ruined. My promotion celebration became the night Emma Rodriguez exposed her uncle's fraud. But I didn't care. Because for the first time in 3 years I felt like I could breathe. The legal process took months. Uncle Richard hired a lawyer who tried to claim the money was used for family expenses and that he'd had verbal permission from my mother. But Marcus's documentation was airtight. The bank records showed clear transfers from our inheritance accounts to the cafe's operating account. The forged trust statements matched Uncle Richard's handwriting. The recording proved he'd lied about investments. The prosecutor added counts of forgery, embezzlement, and financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult because of what he'd done to Mom. Uncle Richard pleaded guilty eventually. His lawyer negotiated a deal, 3 years in prison, full restitution of $130,000 plus 15 years of lost investment returns, which the court calculated at $70,000. Total, $200,000. The cafe had to be sold to pay it. The business Uncle Richard had built with our money, that he'd been so proud of, was liquidated. Aunt Linda filed for divorce before the trial even ended. She'd had no idea what he'd been doing. The betrayal destroyed her almost as much as it destroyed Mom. Mom spent months in therapy, trying to understand how her brother-in-law had manipulated her. Sarah and I spent months trying to figure out how to move forward. When the money came through, Sarah and I split it. $100,000 each. Sarah paid off her student loans immediately. The rest she put into a savings account for after graduation. She's planning to travel now, to take a year and see the world before starting her career. Dad would have wanted that for her. I used my share differently. I put $50,000 toward a down payment on a small condo in Columbus. Not huge, not fancy, but mine. A place where I could finally feel settled. The other $50,000 I did something Dad would have approved of. I started a small venture fund. Nothing massive. Just enough to help young entrepreneurs from my hometown get their businesses started. Kids who have good ideas but no capital. Kids who lost parents or don't have family support. Kids like Sarah and me. I called it the Michael Rodriguez Memorial Fund. Dad's name on something real, something that helps people. Not a cafe that was built on lies and stolen money, but something honest. Uncle Richard is 2 years into his sentence. I haven't visited him. Sarah hasn't either. Mom went once, early on. She came back and said she didn't recognize him. The man who'd been her rock after Michael died, who she'd trusted completely, was a stranger. Aunt Linda sends Christmas cards sometimes. She moved to Arizona, started over. She includes photos of her new apartment, her new job, her new life. She always writes "I'm sorry" somewhere in the card. I write back and tell her it wasn't her fault. She was a victim too. The promotion I was celebrating that night. I ended up turning it down. The drama of the arrest made local news. The story spread through my company. Some people treated me like a hero for exposing fraud. Others treated me like I'd caused family drama at a work celebration. It felt easier to start fresh. I took a job at a different company, same position, same pay. New people who didn't know my story. I could just be Emma Rodriguez, marketing director, without being Emma Rodriguez, the woman who sent her uncle to prison. Sarah graduated last spring. She walked across that stage debt-free, something she never thought possible. I was there, crying harder than Mom did. After the ceremony, Sarah hugged me and whispered, "Dad would be proud of you." I think about that night at Antonio's a lot. The moment I played that recording, the moment Uncle Richard's face went white, the moment everyone realized what he'd done. Part of me still feels guilty. He did raise us after Dad died. He was there for years before the theft started. But then I remember Sarah's student loan statements. I remember the fake trust documents. I remember Mom signing away her estate because she trusted him. And I remember the recording. I did what I had to do. You were a kid. You didn't understand. He'd convinced himself it was okay because we were just kids. Because we didn't understand business. Because he'd sacrificed so much. He'd turned himself into the hero and us into ungrateful children who should be grateful for his theft. That's what people who betray family always do. They rewrite the story until they're the victim. I've learned things about trust since that night. About how the people closest to us can hurt us the deepest because we never see it coming. About how grief makes people vulnerable and how some people exploit that vulnerability instead of protecting it. But I've also learned about resilience. About standing up even when your hands are shaking. About speaking truth even when it destroys the comfortable lies everyone wants to believe. The restaurant owner, Antonio, called me 6 months after everything happened. He said he wanted to apologize for the chaos that night, for how it all unfolded in his restaurant. I told him he had nothing to apologize for. He said something I think about often. "Emma, I've owned this place for 30 years. I've seen hundreds of parties, thousands of dinners. That night at your promotion party? That was the bravest thing I've ever seen someone do. You stood up for yourself and your sister when no one else would. Your father would be proud. I think he's right. Dad would be proud. Not of the arrest or the trial or the broken family, but of the choice to stand up. The choice to protect Sarah. The choice to stop the theft before it destroyed what little of Dad's legacy remained. That's what I tell myself on the hard days. When I miss the uncle I thought I had. When I see Mom's sad eyes because her family is broken. When I wonder if I did the right thing. I did the right thing. Because justice isn't just about punishment. It's about protection. It's about saying that some betrayals are too deep to excuse. Some thefts too calculated to forgive. It's about drawing a line and saying, not my father's daughters. Not us. Not anymore. Sarah starts her job next month. She's going into education, wants to teach high school English. She says she wants to be the kind of teacher who notices when kids are struggling, who asks questions, who helps. She says Uncle Richard taught her something important: always ask questions. Always look at the documents. Never trust blindly, even family. It's a hard lesson, but it's an important one. And maybe that's Dad's real legacy. Not the cafe that failed and was rebuilt with stolen money, but two daughters who learned to stand up, speak out, and protect each other when no one else would. I'm 32 years old. I have a career I've built myself. I have a home that's truly mine. I have a sister who knows I'll always fight for her. And I have a venture fund that helps kids who need support, no strings attached, no betrayals waiting. Uncle Richard took a lot from us. But he couldn't take everything. He couldn't take our strength. He couldn't take our bond. And he couldn't take the truth. That's what I was thinking when I stood at that microphone and hit play. I was thinking, you took our money, you took our trust, you took our father's memory and twisted it into something ugly. But you can't take our voices. And on that night, in that restaurant, my voice was the only one that mattered.